Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the Royal Rail in 1/25th scale. It was re-released in 2009 after an original release in 1972. Round 2 brought it back under AMT brand and is still widely available at online retailers and auction sites. It's a retro deluxe kit version with all the original parts plus some expanded decal sheet. It has over 90 pieces molded in white, chrome, clear blue, clear orange, plastic and vinyl tires and a metal axle. Round 2 lists this as a skill level 2 for the intermediate modeler, and the kit includes a nicely designed Hemi motor, but it does lack many of the detail parts. The interior is simply a pillow seat and a wheel, and the body is comprised of multiple parts as a show rod. It's not a practical vehicle, but it sure is cool when you get her done and put her on your shelf. Now there's a lot of chrome in this build, but unfortunately there's some mold lines that would look better without. So to fix those would require stripping and re-chroming and painting, etc. But that's up to you. You can build it right out of the box in a weekend, and when you're done, the length is 9 inches, and it's 5¼ inches wide and about 6½ inches high. Here are the decals for this kit. As you can see, they're colorful and the register is good. It's quite expansive and it'll fit just about any color you use with either the colored glass or your paint scheme. Now remember, you may need to use some of the aftermarket setting solutions to get these to conform to the contours on your model. And we'll be using Model Master liquid cement, sometimes super glue for strength, and where clear parts are involved, white glue is usually used. Now please remember to use the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when you use any of the products that you see mentioned here in the review. Assembly starts with the motor, so gather these pieces and partially assemble the motor before painting. So assemble the block halves and the heads and paint the block the color of your choice. I used a plum to match my body paint color, and then the transmission is aluminum. Now paint the header manifolds aluminum and install those with some super glue. The belt is a flat black and the fan is just semi-gloss black. Attach those into place and add the valve covers and the velocity stack intakes and line those up with some super glue. Because the engine is so prominent on display here, I wanted to do a little extra, so I decided to use a pre-wired distributor for my motor as an add-on to enhance the appearance. And there's a lot of different brands on the market, but research the ones that you like and whatever price. And I used a Hemi wiring diagram, so then I used that to wire the motor. But first you drill out the hole for the distributor shaft, and then you paint the shaft steel and install it with super glue, and drill out the locations on the valve covers for the spark plugs, and cut the smaller part of the black wire for the boots on each and slide it on each wire. Match the wires up to the diagram and cut to fit. Then slide each wire into place with the boot on it, and then super glue all the wires into place. I used some super glue to continue adding the rest of the pieces to the motor, and then there are some decals for the top of the headers. Add the headers into place on the motor and paint the air filters black and attach the ends to the filter tubes, and then install those on top of the velocity stacks. Get these pieces out to assemble the rear wheels, and there are 2 tire halves. The outside has some writing on it and the inside does not. Super glue the tires together, and then the chrome rim goes to the outside and the center rim is painted silver and installed from the back side. The rear rim is flat black, and the rims didn't really fit into the tires nicely, so they needed a little bit of sanding on the outer sides to thin them out a little bit. So do this slowly so that you don't damage the rims and remove too much material. We can put the front tires together now with these pieces. Remove the center webbing from the tires and then super glue the rim front and rears off center to each other so that there's a crossing of the spokes when viewed from the side. Now note that the chassis is assembled as one unit in the instructions, but I'm going to break it down into 3 sub-assemblies that will be completed later into the full chassis, and this will allow you to assemble it easier and have a stronger build, as the chassis is not very solid by itself. We can start by getting out these pieces and then use the forks and paint the drag link black and then choose the lens color for your light. Install the lens into the housing and add the housing into place on the light stalk. And then I use some super glue there. Now add the side panels with some super glue and assemble the expansion tank and add that. Then add the wheels, install the drag link, and add the light stalk. Now set this assembly aside to dry. Use these pieces to build the rear axle. Now assemble the axle halves and paint those flat black, and then install the rear cover and the shocks and slide the metal axle into the rear axle housing and add the rear tires to each side by pressing them towards each other. Now find these parts in the kit and we'll use those to build the frame. And using some super glue, attach the front and rear cross members and then add the lower cross member to the one side of the frame. Add the other frame side and make sure that the frame is straight. Now add the frame supports to each side and paint this unit your frame color of choice. I used gold for mine, and install the motor and set this aside to dry. Using some super glue you can assemble the suspension at this point, install the rear axle connecting the drive shaft into place, and attach the forks in place on the front of the frame. Next we'll gather these parts to start the interior. Paint the steering wheel rim black with an aluminum spokes, and the shifter is aluminum with a white knob. The pillow is your color choice, and the frame supports are frame color. Now the interior and the steering arm is flat black. Now paint the fuel tank aluminum and assemble that. Add the tank cap and install the fuel tank to the bottom. Now install the steering arm, add the steering wheel, shifter, and pillow. And the frame supports go along the opening in the interior to the back of the interior. Now install this unit onto the chassis. The body will be built in 2 steps here instead of 1 that's shown in the instructions. We can start body assembly now. Choose the rear window color that you want to use and then paint the window frame the color of your chassis. Now install the window, paint the tail light stoplight red, and install them on the window frame's rear. As there are no positive attachment points, put them on each corner and eye them up so they're symmetrical. Now super glue the window frame to the interior. I used some super glue to construct the entire crown. It just seemed easier to put it into place and then dab a little super glue on and accelerant, and it was there in position for good. Now assemble the crown halves and the ball halves, and these will be painted the color of your choice. Normally you would sand or primer the parts, but I used a water-based paint, so all I really needed to do was scuff the pieces before I painted them. The base, for example, a plum color, and then I used a clear coat with some purple pearl powder added into it, and assemble the crown to the base. Add the rib connector and ribs to the crown and base, and the crown ball sits in the rib connector with the cross on top, and this is installed as a unit onto the window frame. I think you'd have to agree that the decals are the crown jewels of this kit, and if you carefully look them over and decide how you want to place them, you can have a very tasteful looking royal rail on your shelf when you're done. This kit may need to have some of the setting solutions that you can buy to help settle some of the larger decals, but by and large they fit in there pretty well, and if you don't put them around too many contours, you should be able to just use some warm water to put them into place. And you'll go ahead and apply your decals at this time, and then overall she's going to look pretty darn nice from the front and the back, as you can see in these next shots. Depending on your choices, you'll have a few pieces left and a lot of decals unless you use them all on one model. But as you can see, there are different colored lenses and glass for the coach, and a lot of decals left over for your part stash. Well, there you have it. You'll be fit for a king when you finish this royal rail and put one on your shelf. It's a great looking kit. Although it's a little touchy as far as the chassis goes, not all the construction points are well pointed out in the instructions or on the features. So you'll have a little work to do there. When you're done, it's solid enough, but it's not a real strong kit. I would suggest that this is probably more suited for advanced builders, just because of the age of the molds, the cleanup, and the placements that you'll have to use some super glue to get to stay. Overall, though, it's a really nice idea, a show rod and a trike, and these were made in the time period, and the details were not exact as they should be if it were a real vehicle, but it's basically just a cool kit to build. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you liked this premium step-by-step model kit review. And so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.